Hello, YouTube. So I want to talk about the pros and cons of HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. And I found an article about this. The title of the article is "The Blacker the College, the Sweeter the Knowledge?" Question mark. And what I'm going to do, it's like a one-page article. One-page article. And I'm just going to read through the introduction and then read the list of pros and cons. And I'll just kind of do like a pro, then a con, right? So let me begin, all right? For over a century, historically black colleges and universities served to maintain a national policy of educational segregation that largely limited Negro instruction to training for industrial trades established by the rules of Jim Crow. All right. And by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but this article was published in autumn of 1994, so it's a bit dated. But overall, the heart of the information here still is relevant today. All right. Next, in the early days, black colleges were nothing more than high schools for Negroes. I didn't know that actually. I suppose it could make sense. It would make sense. Yeah. In later years, the black colleges embarked on broader courses of liberal studies, providing higher education to millions of African American students, many of whom would not otherwise have had the benefit of a college education. Today, the black colleges enroll about 16% of all black college students. Due to higher retention and graduation rates for black students at black colleges than prevail at predominantly white institutions, black colleges produce roughly 1/4 of all black college graduates. Today, black colleges are attracting an even larger percentage of the nation's most highly qualified black students. For example, in the fall of 1993, Howard University enrolled more National Achievement Scholars than any other college or university in the nation except for Harvard. So they were second to Harvard. Okay. Um, so here is a list of some of the considerations for and against the choice of an education at black colleges and universities. All right. So I read the introduction. Now let's get into the pros and cons of attending HBCUs. All right. So here's the pro. Black colleges tend to provide a nurturing environment where black students can study in a relatively tension-free academic and social setting. Right? Here is a con. Black students at black colleges do not have the opportunity to network with white college students who might prove to be valuable contacts for future economic and professional pursuits. That is true because at the end of the day, you are in college for your career. You're not so much in college for, quote unquote, the college experience. Let's be real. That's what's being sold to the youth, you know, whether the college themselves, the colleges and universities themselves are selling it, or like the media. But at the end of the day, you go to college for a career, right? And, connections and networking are important to keep it real. All right. Next, curricula at black colleges place less emphasis on the dominant value of Eurocentric teaching and thought. So that's a pro. All right. And, that is something to consider. However, I will say though, depending on what field you're studying, you may have to learn about white males. Let's be honest, depending on what field you're studying in, if you're in some sort of a like really scientific field or a STEM-based field, then you will have to learn about white males. So that could be an advantage, could not be an advantage. It depends, right? But I understand the heart of that, which is like you get to sort of study curricula that has you in mind, and that is reflective of you, which is great. All right. Next, this is a con. Many top law firms, brokerage houses, corporations, and graduate schools do not recruit on Black college campuses. That's important. Let's be real, that's important. Now, I feel like probably like Harvard, not Harvard, but Howard University, because Howard University is considered a top tier school. As well, it is a historically Black college. It's probably I believe, one of the top schools, the top 100 schools in the country, right? So a school like Howard University, a HBCU like Howard University, probably can attract, some, law firms, brokerage houses, corporations, and graduate schools to recruit. They probably could, but other schools, I don't know, you know. Next, this is a pro. Many academic studies made by both Black and whites show that Black students often progress faster in a classroom where they do not have to compete with white students. That's a pro. But the thing is with that, I'm like, well, in the real world, you do have to compete with white folk, as well as people of other racial and ethnic groups. You do. That is just a part of our society that we live in. But they're saying that this is a pro, specifically in the classroom setting, which, okay, it can be, but, as far as just being reflective of society and reality, and preparing you for society and reality outside of the classroom, I don't know, But that's a pro. All right, here's a con. Libraries at Black colleges on average have far fewer books and periodical subscriptions per student than predominantly white colleges. All right. So if you like to read, Black college may not be for you. All right. All right. Next. On average, Black colleges have lower tuition costs than do white colleges, making higher education more affordable to Black students. And I'll say at this point, higher education, the price has gotten higher and higher and higher, and the quality has either stayed the same or has gotten a little like lower and lower and lower. At best, it probably stays the same, And again, a HBCU like, say, Howard probably is on the more expensive side, probably is comparable to like an elite, predominantly white private school, because they can command that sort of a price tag because, of their rankings and, their alumni, all the things that factor into colleges setting the price for their tuition, right? If it's a public HBCU, then you may have a better chance at a cheaper tuition rate, right? But at this point, I feel like the public and private colleges that are HBCUs are probably on par with their white equivalents. Like, public HBCUs are probably more or less on par with public white institutions. And private HBCUs are probably on par with private white institutions, except maybe if they're like really elite, Next, this is a con. Personal computers are scarce on college campuses of many Black colleges and universities. All right, this is a pro. Black colleges tend to offer large numbers of Black role models and mentors among faculty and administrators. Successful Black role models tend to be scarce on most predominantly white campuses. And I'll say, like, during my whole college experience, I think I probably had maybe one professor that was black slash African American, and that was for a class on African American studies. You know, so that is a factor. But for me in my personal situation, I have had many, like in elementary school, middle school, and high school, I've had many black teachers. So I didn't feel like ultimately I was really missing out on much. But it would have been nice to see more black teachers and black faculty members in the mix. However, the fields that I studied probably aren't the most popular when it comes to like black people. You know. So there probably were black people who did teach at the college I attended and graduated from, but I just didn't encounter them. That's all. Perhaps. You know. Next, this is a con. Public black colleges in many states are still subject to significantly lower educational funding from state governments compared to predominantly white public universities in the same state. So, black colleges and universities that are public may get less funding, which means less resources. Next, black college graduation rate for black students is higher than the national average for black students matriculating at predominantly white colleges. So, seems like black colleges tend to graduate black students more than white colleges. Okay. Next, most private black colleges have very small endowments per student compared to white colleges. This limits the ability of these schools to offer a broad and strong curriculum. Endowment constraints also limit financial aid to black students. And again, this is a con, all right? And when it comes to this, also, what you have to keep in mind is when you're at an HBCU, you're no longer the minority, you're the majority, which there are, of course, many benefits to being the majority. But one of the drawbacks to that is that these colleges, these HBCUs, they're kind of like on the diversity train themselves. They want to diversify their student population too. So when it comes to scholarships, black students may not be at the forefront when it comes to them giving out scholarships based on, where race is a factor in them, right? Because they already have enough black students. Let's be real. Not to say that you won't get a scholarship, but it's just like your race may not help you to get the scholarship, right? Because you're not the minority in this case, you're the majority, right? So if you're a white student or just a non-black student in general, you may have a better chance at getting a scholarship at an HBCU than a black student would, right? And as well, I think I think an HBCU for white students would be kind of like a good option for them, as far as like them showing that, they have, diversified themselves and, gotten out of their, white bubble, quote unquote, so to speak. And it may reflect well when they go to different jobs and corporations for employment, right? For black students, perhaps it may not reflect as well because it may seem like, oh, you're kind of like you didn't go outside of your bubble, so to speak, your black bubble, right? It's something to keep in mind, Next. Many black colleges offer merit-based financial aid, which is not available at most of the nation's highly selective colleges and universities. I will say again, this article is a bit dated. It's from 1994. I know that like the really elite colleges, like Harvard and Yale, I think when it comes to aid, if you can get in and your income is below a certain point, they'll pay for your education. Like I think like like $50,000 or less, like as far as like your household income, I believe that they will pay for it. Like Harvard will pay your tuition, or Yale, or the Ivy League schools, I think, are doing this, right? And I also heard that like NYU is starting to offer like free um, medical school. I heard that somewhere. I maybe misread, but I remember hearing that or reading about that. Um, let's see. Next, this is the con. Most black colleges and universities have very limited equipment and resources for scientific research. This is something right here. Um, depending on what you want to study, it may be better for you to attend, say, a public state school. It depends, right? Like if you want to study like, engineering or nursing, something along those lines, like STEM-based fields, you could get more for your buck, more bang for your buck, and even better quality um, instruction by attending like a public, you know, institution, whether it's a predominantly white institution or a predominantly black institution. It could be better. I know there are some private colleges that do have, very strong, STEM programs, but they also are very expensive too. Now, if you can afford it, if you come from a really well-off background, then, more power to you, because I think that the school's name could play a role in you getting certain positions. That is true. However, if you can't afford, a very elite private college, there are, again, public institutions with very strong STEM programs, That's something to keep in mind too, where sometimes it may be better for you to attend, very much better for you to attend the public school or the public institution, right? And then some private colleges, they're more like liberal arts based anyway, where their scientific STEM, STEM type programs aren't even that strong anyway. Some, again, that's when the research comes into play, and you gotta really find out what these colleges can really offer you, because this is an investment. Again, this college is an investment. People don't look at it that way. I know when I first attended college and graduated, I wasn't looking at it like, as an investment. you know, in hindsight and now knowing what I know, definitely. Yeah. And I think for me, that's why I haven't, you know, gone on to graduate school yet, and perhaps may not go on to graduate school. But I'll make a separate video about whether you should or should not attend graduate school. A separate video for that. All right. Next, black colleges more often offer remedial education courses, allowing black students who have not received a high-quality secondary education an opportunity to improve their basic skills. Okay, that's true. All right. However, you could get this also from a community college. Just putting it out there. And, depending on what community college you go to, it could be a majority, it could have like a majority black student population, or a majority black student body as well. Um, I know the ones in my area, I think they tend to have a majority black student the student body. So also probably at a cheaper price because it's community college, and also perhaps even the instruction may be a bit more intimate and hands-on too. Again, something to keep in mind. All right. Next, this is a con. Most black colleges and universities let's see, I read that. Because of the isolated environments that tend to prevail at Black colleges, students after graduation may be less prepared to deal with and move ahead in a white-dominated society. I mentioned that earlier in this video, and I believe that is a factor too. Now, folks can do well, of course, but I do think that's something to consider too. Um, Next, this is a pro. Black colleges offer more cultural events and other extracurricular activities that are attractive to African American students. All right. And again, like I said, that is great, definitely. Although at some colleges you could find, it depends on if there's a significant Black population at the college that you're attending that is a white institution. They could have like events that are geared towards African Americans as well. And as well, just in general, again, when it comes to college, it's an investment, and ultimately you're here for your career. And I know some people are like, well, I want to party, and I'm like, yeah, definitely, enjoy yourself, but make sure that you're choosing your college ultimately based on what they can do for your career. All right. Next, let's see. Academic offerings at many Black colleges are far less extensive than at many white institutions. Black students who wish to study a particular academic discipline may not find a Black college that offers the choices they desire. And I kind of touched on this earlier with the STEM programs, engineering, nursing, and public schools. I think this is a factor too. You could the public white institution, depending on your field of study, could be the far better option because of the resources that they have available to you as a student. So that's something to keep in mind too. Next, living conditions at Black colleges, including social events, cafeteria offerings, fraternity life, and all other non-academic aspects of the college experience, are more attuned to the African American lifestyle. Yeah, so again, if these things are a factor for you, if you're looking for the college experience that's African American centered and African American based, then definitely. But like I said, don't get too caught up in that. I'm just keeping it 100. Don't get too caught up in that now, because first of all, living on campus, if you're considering that's kind of expensive to keep it real. I lived on campus for a year. And after that, I moved off campus. And I did, I was able to get the quote unquote college experience. It wasn't at an HBCU, but nevertheless, the college experience, right? So perhaps, try it if you feel inclined to, or if you feel drawn to. Try and see if it works out for you, But like I said, ultimately you're in college to further your career, not to have a good time, because you can have a good time outside of college. Let's be honest. You can party outside of college. You don't have to attend a college to have, to go to a party. Let's be real. All right, next. Professors at Black colleges on average are forced to teach more classes than faculty at white institutions. I feel like this is true, and I feel like this is a factor in why oftentimes some of our Black folks with PhDs who are famous, like say, a Boyce Watkins or a Michael Eric Dyson or a Cornel West, will probably choose to teach at white institutions that are private because they offer so much more. And this sort of goes into another con that I'll just read off, and then I'll come back to talking about this, okay? Over the years, the most gifted faculty at Black colleges and universities will tend to drift away toward appointments at predominantly white institutions with strong financial backing that can offer higher salaries, better benefits, greater research facilities, and a lighter teaching load. So again, look at the colleges that Michael Eric Dyson, Boyce Watkins, Cornell West, who's that lady? Melissa Harris Perry. Look at the colleges that they taught at, are teaching at. All right. Usually these folks, you know, they going where the money is. Let's keep it real. And these, especially these private white institutions, really do, have the resources to offer them a really nice, package when it comes to, getting paid, benefits, like I said, the pay, the benefits, the lighter teaching load, the research facilities that are better, all right? But these folks are preaching pro-black though, right? And I think Boyce Watkins actually did a video speaking about something like this too, about going to teach at the HBCU, but ultimately it didn't work out. All right. Let's see. Next, this is the pro. Private Black colleges tend to have smaller class sizes than similar-sized white institutions. In addition, very few classes are taught by graduate students. Okay. All right, so more intimate feel, right? Perhaps even being felt like you're like dealing with a private tutor versus a teacher, perhaps. This is a con. So next. If increasing numbers of highly qualified Black students enroll in Black colleges, these institutions will be strengthened, thereby tending to reinforce racial segregation and undermine the national goal of fully integrated education. All right. Next, this is a pro. Students at white colleges can speak up freely in class on any social issue without concern for being regarded as a spokesperson for their race. That's true, but I will say that, I think it is like when it comes to college and, those type of discussions in class, I do think it's really interesting when you have different points of view, right? People from different walks of life. Right? There were students who were like white students, students who were Black students, students who were Asian students, students who were Latino students, students who were part of the LGBTQ community, students that had different religious backgrounds, right? So I do think when it comes to discussions and stuff like that, that for having a more interesting and a more like a wider ranging discussion, the diversity could help, right? Because I think when it comes to Black people, perhaps we kind of like are on one accord, and sometimes that can work for us. Sometimes I think it's good to get a second opinion or to get a differing opinion, right? Because then without that, you could end up participating in groupthink, and that can be dangerous. All right, because I don't think we all shouldn't agree on every single thing. I just don't think that's reasonable. But some things, yes, we do need to be on one accord about, but not every single little thing, though, right? Next, this is a pro as well. In black colleges, students are not exposed to racial harassment, the racial prejudice of students, faculty, or administrators, or to subtle forms of institutional racism often prevailing at white institutions. And that is true. But on the flip side, I think that when you get out into the workforce, you're going to have to deal with that, though. So it's just sort of perhaps delaying the inevitable in a way. And also, there was a note that I forgot to read in regards to black college graduation rates. All right. Let's see. The highly selective, predominantly white colleges tend to have very high black student completion rates, often comparable to the completion rates of white students. All right. So there you have it. That's the list. A bit of a read. Well, it's one page, but I was given more information and elaborating, so that made it longer than it should. But overall, my personal opinion, I think HBCUs are great for certain groups or certain people. I'm not saying that we should eliminate HBCUs, do away with them, But when it comes to black students, I think that non-HBCUs could be the better option. And when it comes to non-black students, like, white folks, Asian folks, Latinos, etc., HBCUs could be a good option, oddly enough. Me personally, I never really, the HBCUs never really appealed to me. Again, strongly in part because, again, like I grew up in a majority black community. I went to majority black schools, like majority black church, majority black folk all around. So I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. I feel like I already had the, low-key the HBCU experience, right? I kind of wanted more diversity for, myself personally. And I think ultimately that helped. All right. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.